I am unashamed. What about you?
So, Jase, today is your birthday.
It is.
I've
I've gotten several texts.
You got a lot of texts?
Texts. No phone calls, because I've learned something. People, when they get 50, which I'm over 50.
50.
The only people who call you are over 50. Because like somebody like you, Phil, you don't realize now a cell phone, it's not used for calling people. Like if somebody's calling me, it's spam. You're not gonna know what that means. Spam is a collection of people calling, trying to scam you.
And it comes up on the phone now.
So when the spam
risk.
The spam meat, they take all the parts that you would never eat, put them together, call it spam, people eat it. On the phone, people call other people, usually over 50, because they're the only ones going to answer the phone. But most people text. So you text each other. You use your phone for everything but a phone call. Yeah. Think about it.
Oh, that's true.
You get information. Yeah. You listen to all music, not just some music, all music. You have access to anything in the world. But if somebody calls you, you're almost offended because they're interrupting whatever else you were doing on the phone. Why would you want to talk to me? Why don't you send me a text and line it up?
I have a little board on my left of my chair, and I have little pieces of paper with phone numbers on them. But if anybody calls, I just glance at that. And if it's none of those numbers, you'll never be able to talk to me.
And it's a small.
But you still, as a general rule, answer your phone.
It's not that big a board.
You answer the phone because you're still in the air. You know that we had a phone for what, 110 years before you could actually move away from the couch to talk. Just think how long that is.
I remember when telephones came into existence.
Well, that's what I mean.
Nobody had a telephone, and then it started out party line, 10 people are on it. Everybody, yeah, shut up, get off the line. Women chewing you out. So I thought it was a hassle.
Remember the
now I can't even describe what it is.
Remember the first time you got a portable phone that you could walk around the house with? It was like, we're Cadillacing now. Well, I can walk in the.
I remember when the remote turned the TV on, came into, because up into the end you got up.
You
didn't have a 4-channel.
No, you didn't get up. We were the remote. Me and Jase were the remote.
I was a human remote. Well, now Phil, look,
Jase gonna change the channel.
Now you had 4 channels, 1 remote. Now there's 1 TV and 4 remotes.
That's right.
I know it.
That's right. And I can't figure out.
And thousands of channels. Yeah. That's what I'm telling you. You're missing out.
See, there's warp. There's a time warp. You're 50. I'm 75.
No, I'm over 50.
He's 50, more than 50.
And from 51. When you were a child, 52, when you were born 50 years ago, the thing that's happened in that last 50 years, I can't even explain it to anybody. I said, what in the world happened?
The more disturbing thing here is that you really don't know how old I am, and you're my father.
Well, he's been saying you're getting close to 50. So
I would have to admit, I didn't know today until right now. I didn't know today is your birthday.
Yeah, I know.
Look, so guess what? That's your so my traditional gift to Jason's birthday is a case of golf balls of. Because you had a hole-in-one last week.
Well, I was going to tell you, that was my birthday round because I'm here with you on my birthday, which we used to for a long time. We had a tradition.
We played on our birthdays.
Yep. When all the brothers played golf.
Mine was the hardest because it was during duck season. It's in January.
Al now has a turning. The older you get, he can no longer turn.
No, I got to turn.
So now he's turned into basically a mini putt-putt golfer. Willie,
I go from here to here. That's about
every time Willie swings, something breaks, tears, or rips in his body.
Yeah.
And because he always had a violent.
I've heard about this game y'all call fun, and I'm like, it just doesn't seem like it was.
Well, I'm gonna tell you why it's fun. So I played 1 round in a month, and this guy that I play with, so like, hey, I want to take you to play golf for your birthday, which I thought that meant he's gonna pay for my cart or something. No, that just meant we showed up and he rode along with me on a round that I paid for.
No finances.
That's not a gift.
Yeah, I thought
your gift was getting to spend 4 hours with him.
I spent the whole round thinking of how I was going to tell him. Should I thank him for something I could have done by myself? So look, I parred the first hole, borderline miraculous that I parred it because I topped my drive. I sculled my second shot. It's par 5.
This sounds like my You're hitting like, oh, wow.
Yeah. I sculled my second shot down there that evaded 2 ponds. I then chunked the third one that barely made it past the pond. I'm like 70 yards out.
And you got up and down?
Well, yeah, but listen to the story. So then I basically sculled the next shot, but I got lucky because they had
What does skull mean?
that means you hit about 6 inches off the ground. You're going way too fast.
Your club raises up, and so you hit it, and it just drills it.
In the golf world, it's a bad thing.
Yeah, it's a worm burner.
But they had turned the sprinklers on that morning to water the green. And so when my ball hit where the sprinkler was, it stopped.
Yeah.
Or it'd have gone out of bounds.
Oh, yeah.
So now I got about a 40-footer for par, and I drained it. I made the 40-foot putt. So I thought, no, okay, because all you need, and yeah, I thought maybe it is a birthday round. So we go to the next hole, which is a par 3, 155. It's embarrassing that I'm hitting a 7-iron, but it was into the wind because usually, people hit a shorter club. So I teed the ball up and I hit it, and I was mad because I didn't hit one good shot on the first hole. So I kind of just concentrated, took the swing, hit it dead flush. I looked up, it was headed to where I was going. So I was like, that's what I was more like.
I finally got a good swing. Yeah.
This is what I came here to do. I'm picking the tee up. I'm walking back to the cart. The ball's still in the air. And my buddy, who supposedly was taking me on the golf round, says that may go in. Well, when he said that, I looked, and it bounced in front of the pin, a little trickle, disappeared. But I'd like to say that I enjoyed it more, but I was still angry of how I played the first hole. I thought, I'm not going to jump up and down by doing what I was supposed to be doing. So I was like, yep. Happy birthday, Jace.
I noticed evidently golf is a game with many emotional ups and downs.
Yeah, it is.
It is.
Because when I hear y'all talk about it, it tells me you were wise not to ever fool with that crap.
Well, I'm pretty sure that what I've noticed is the older you get, the more balls you need.
That's right.
Because
that's why we give each other balls on our birthday.
And look, those balls cost about $5 a piece. Whoever's doing that, that's what you need to get into.
So Jay sent me a text and his boys right after that happened, and he had a picture of the scorecard and said, that just happened. I saw that one.
So it's the kind of game, just from what I hear y'all talking about it, that unless you're good, being good really helps the emotional level.
Well,
just being good at it.
It does, but the problem is even the pros, they're so much better than us, but they're still chasing the perfect round. Golf is a game you never feel fully satisfied and so you just have maybe if you have the round of your life, well, then you got to come back and play another round. So it's just, it never ends. It's a pursuit is why I think people like the game.
Probably top 10
the
dumbest
pursuit of perfection.
It is.
Which is
top 10 dumbest things we humans ever came up with that I
wasn't going to say that, but I thought.
But we enjoy it.
I've got an idea. Let's go dig 18 holes and try to put a round object in it. And whoever does it in the fewer strokes, we'll call him great.
Yeah.
So, Jace, what's interesting is your birthday is August 16th is also, one of the things that's memorable about it is 8 years after your birthday.
Are we going to bring this up?
Oh, yeah. Elvis died on Jace's birthday, August the 16th.
If I did go to counseling, it would go back.
So it turned out to be a somber day.
Well, do you remember you still remember the day Granny told it?
I remember the day the party died. Here's all the gifts. We're all fixed to eat. And they're like, oh, wait a minute. Elvis just died. And
it's over.
When I'm saying the party died with it, I don't know where everybody went, but they left there. And now, every year after that, for about 10 years, which is the reason
it would be the anniversary of Elvis.
Was so difficult. We can't celebrate your birthday because everybody's crying because Elvis died, because our family was big Elvis fans.
That's right. And Granny's the one that told us that day, so I had to bring it up because I don't know if we talked about it.
I actually maybe one of the few that actually saw Elvis Presley perform.
Yeah,
when I hadn't heard
Shreveport, Louisiana, the Louisiana Hayride.
And that was in his early days.
And you went?
I actually, as about a 8-year-old, 10.
Oh, I was fixing to say, was there any drinking involved? But that was before you started.
No,
This was just watching the chicks jump up and down and go nuts. And my kinfolks, the females, they had this thing. They were like taking napkins and wiping the dust off of Elvis's Cadillac, and they kept that as a memoir for years.
Boy, you
The
got
dust
some,
off his Cadillac.
You got some weird kinfolk.
I was just looking around, saying, "What? I'm lost in."
So
a world.
one of our good friends, Rhonda, who we've known forever and helped lead them to Christ. When she was a little girl, Elvis came to Monroe, and he was performing at the Civic Center. And at the end, he would like take these scarves off and throw them out in the crowd.
Oh, yeah.
Well, she was there on the front row, and so he took his scarf off and he went to hand it to her, where some woman comes up and grabs it away from Rhonda. And
Did she ever get over it?
She was a little girl. Well, listen to the rest of the story. So he pulls her up on stage when this woman took the thing, because like you said, they're snatching and grabbing. And he takes his necklace, one of his necklaces he wore, gold necklace, and puts it over her neck. And the crowd goes wild, and she goes back out to her mom. Well, she's had that her whole life.
Oh, I thought she was going to say she walked to the vehicle and somebody
No.
robbed her. And
No, she had it her whole life, but she's always had a dream of having her own restaurant. So just within the last few years, and then that thing's worth a lot of money. One is the story of it, that it was actually his, and it's chronicled because there's a picture of her on that stage that was in the newspaper with that around her neck. But then she sold it so she could start a restaurant. So I thought it was pretty.
She did well. The price.
Yeah, well, she waited 40 years, before she sold it. So
But see, it shows you how humanity is. I never listened to Elvis after that, because it was always known to me as the guy who ruined my birthday.
And I was coming.
I was a kid. I was like 8 years old.
Yeah.
I was like, whoever Elvis is,
not a fan.
I don't like him anymore.
I remember his performance, and all I can say is a lot of gyration, a lot of.
So you'll find this interesting. So this past weekend, I'm down at the Southern Lair, actually on Friday, and I'm standing in line and waiting to check out at Rouse's at the supermarket. And I'm just looking over, and the tabloids are always right there by where you check out. And so it catches my eye that they got Elvis on there. Of course, they're about to celebrate Jase's birthday and his passing, 44 years now. And I look there, and I'm reading that, they found the person that caused Elvis's death, somebody he was secretly in love with, whatever, tabloid. So I'm like, look at that. And then I look up in the corner of the tabloid, and there's a picture of Dad. And I thought, oh boy.
I bet you that was a story.
It was Dad and Phyllis. And it said, feud over $15 million fortune. Love child gets her cut. That was the title of the thing. So then I look at it, and it was just like this one that came out of you. And I'm not mentioning the tabloid because I don't want y'all to buy it. But because
they can Google it in about.
Well, they can. But look, I just want to mention it because it's all a bunch of bull. But they just make up stuff is what gets me. But Jase, the bad thing about these tabloid articles, Dad and Phyllis are coming off looking fine. It's like they love each other, and Dad's glad to have her. The villains are us.
Oh, I'm the villain?
You're the villain, and me.
Hey.
Because we're and now Mom, they threw her under the bus. They're like, yeah, she's getting all their money, blah blah blah.
And if I get back on TV again, this is all going to start again.
So they weren't ripping me?
No, they were like, they talk good about you.
Really?
They said, and it's funny because it lets me know that somebody's listened to our podcast or whatever, because the stuff they were quoting from you, stuff was actually said that, you've enjoyed getting to know her, or stuff like that, stuff we've talked about. But with us, they were like, oh, those kids, they're moody, and, they don't want her to have any money. And it was just a bunch of bull.
For the past 6 or 7, about 6 or 7 years.
That's what Mom said. Mom said, well, one of them is moody.
I am moody.
The last 6 to 7 years, about 7 years, I have to confess to our audience that I haven't been shopping in a store at any time at any.
You wouldn't find the tabloid, would you? Unless but I brought it to Dad today. Let's take a break. So we talk about not having fear, but there are people out there, I don't know if you know this, Jase, that really, really want to steal your home. I don't want to make you afraid, because we say fear not. We're talking about not being fearful, but there are some insidious cyber thieves out there that want to steal your home, and especially the equity that you have in your home. So, you know, we've talked about people inventing ways of doing evil, and certainly this is one of them. But they go in and they steal your home title that's online, forge your signature, stating that you sold your home, and then they take out loans using your equity. So that's kind of the scam that they have going. You're not covered by insurance, your bank, or even common identity theft programs. So you need something to help you, and Home Title Lock, which is one of our longtime sponsors, will help you protect your most valuable asset. You go there, HometitleLock.com, register your address, make sure you're not already a victim, and you're going to receive a complete title history of your home, which is a $100 value. You get that for free because your listeners do it here on Unashamed. So it's HometitleLock.com. Register your address, make sure that you still own your home.
I missed all that.
Yeah, I wanted to bring it so you could see it. But anyway, Look, by the way, we laugh about it because people are going to make stuff up about you. It's just the way it is. All right, so I want to mention something, Jace, on a past podcast. I've been meaning to bring this up. I forgot about it last week.
Oh, I haven't. Because this is what happens when you get our wives, number one, on the podcast.
Which, by the way, our audience, at least most of the people I've been hearing from, love it when our wives are on the podcast. But
They do?
They do. And so you were gone. You were doing Dusty Hill's eulogy, you and Willie.
Yep.
So in your absence, we talked about
I'd love to see how Al's fixed to wiggle out of this.
So we had Missy and Lisa on. So we get at the end of the podcast and we start talking about, and Missy wanted to talk about this, by the way.
She wanted to talk about it, and I didn't want to talk about it.
About names for Jason, grandparent names, because, you know, Reed and Brighton are having
Grandparent names.
what they're going to be
Phil,
called.
I'm fixed to be a I'm 52, and I'm fixed to be a grandparent.
Yeah, Reed and Brighton.
So now you're up on the latest events.
That's right.
So you're entering the papaw zone.
Well, that was what the debate was over. Missy, my
what to
lovely
call
wife,
you? What to call you?
she said, "What do you want people to call you?" Now look, what I can't stand.
Well, take the advice. So what do they call me?
No, we've already gone through this. We're not looking for those names. I gave her the name, and she asked. This is kind of like when somebody asks you to do a favor and then you don't do it, then they're mad. This is what happened. Because she said, "What name do you want to be called?" I thought about it for a second. She had no idea what I was fixed to say. And I said, Rock.
Rock? Rock. Not rock on. Rock.
Not the Rock.
I said Rock. The problem happened when Al, because then.
All right, so before you say something. So, Dad, if I said to you, here's a saying, dumb as a, what would you put in that line? Dumb as an
ox.
Dumb as an
Okay. Al, I think we've proven my point here.
Okay. So there's also a saying, dumb as a rock, dumb as a bag of hammers. There's a lot of different dumb.
Here's what happened, Phil. When Al said, "What are you going to be called?" Dumb as a, and all I heard was a dumb donkey.
He thought,
you follow me?
All three of them, including Josh, our engineer, thought I said, "Oh," as in dumb A star.
Yeah.
But I was saying dumb as a.
But there's a lot of people out there who thought, well, we did. And look, I didn't think, I thought,
but I didn't think anything about it because I didn't say that. So like they all reacted strongly. I thought they were laughing at my joke.
I thought Al was calling me that, and I thought Al has had a midlife breakdown. I really thought
our
that.
cousin Lulu thought the same thing.
This is the first.
You could get the King James version of the Bible, and you could.
I mean, in the grand,
you could biblically say dumb.
Yeah.
Now it's been said.
It's biblical.
Now it's been said.
So
King James version. A lot of people say live or die by the King James version.
He was.
I didn't say it.
He was not saying that. And so I
showed a Jewish guy over there in
told y'all this
Genesis.
is a bad idea.
I showed a Jewish guy when Ishmael was born, and he said he will be the King James version said a wild ass of a man.
That's what it says.
But in the NIV it says wild donkey of a man.
Well, right.
But when I showed him, he was reading from the King James, and I was reading from the NIV. A Jewish guy, I was just showing him the background of Ishmael. Both of them came from Abraham. So he was like, I've never seen that before. I said, he will live a wild ass of a man, and he will live in hostility toward all his brothers.
And then you said King James version and winked at him.
Well, his sons, it said the same thing. They were full of trouble, and they were all wild donkeys of men. As they know.
Well, technically, Al was right because he didn't say that. I thought he did, and I thought people are going to be offended because there's a lot of people out there who are there. It's like this is your first beeping opportunity on the podcast. You know where they put the little beep.
I don't think it would be. I think it would be a little crude.
Yeah.
To use that terminology
trust me, Jace,
for a grandfather.
But
Jace,
he wasn't using it, but I thought he was.
Yeah, it was.
So I thought, well,
and then I once they told me what they thought I said, when I played it back in my mind, I thought, oh, I see how that sounded like that.
But I will say this, Jace, as far as your lifestyle is concerned, and any upcoming grandfathers who find out that information on their birthday, they're good night, I'm fixing to be I noticed that two things stand out about grandfathers. Grand, which means grand. I mean, right? And also
it means
then you have another child from that group, and it's great grandfather.
That's right.
So it's great, and grand are put together. I'm not quite sure why the human race decided to call each other great and grand when they get 50 years on them.
Because
it's worthy of note.
Because it's awesome. And every generation you add is another great.
Because think about
what's
it.
better than
you look
great and
across the
grand?
spectrum, and
Great.
I'm looking at all of our siblings that came from y'all, you, Jace, Willie,
Yep.
and Al, and Phyllis, and Jephthah. I'm looking at that whole group, and it's turning into a large group that are now into not only grandfather, it's great grandfather, and moving into if you last long enough, what we are doing now, I'm great grandfather.
Well, I've got a 15 and a 13-year-old granddaughter, so there's a good chance if you hang around for 10 more years, you will be a great grandfather.
That's
You'll be
right.
a double great.
So why is it that term of endearment? Why is that attached to you when you get 50 plus? Like Jason's just entering. I'm on down the way 25 years.
It's an accomplishment. It's a survival.
Maybe that's what it is.
You survived generations, and your progeny, you're able to watch.
Maybe that's it.
You're able to watch things happen.
He's still here.
That's it right there. I mean, it's just saying. It's a great thing. So, Jace, our Unashamed audience, because Missy asked him to, has weighed in on some names that they think you and Missy should consider.
boy.
And so I think I want to get Dad's reaction on some of these.
Is any profane language?
No profane. We've already covered that. And by the way, Jace, I'll make a pledge. I'll never call you that, a dumb A star, ever. At least in front of you.
I thought you were having a midlife
I think
crisis.
that's too crude for a family structure
I wouldn't
to call you that.
I wouldn't do that.
Well,
not to your face.
You see, I thought he did because I wasn't familiar with that saying. I had never
You have
heard.
to remember,
Well, it's just dumb as an ox.
I just felt on your birthday and your explanation of what were they going to call you, I just entered a zone where, I'm like,
You're not an expert.
I've been here a long time. It's what I'm trying to say. I'm lucky to be here.
So here's the first one from Lynn: Pee and Cha Cha.
A little too yuppie-ish for me,
Okay.
but
Here's Papa Rock and Big Mama.
Well, I like that because I'm.
Missy's gonna love Big Mama.
only if Grandma was getting a little heavy in her few last
that
few-
won't work.
No, it won't work.
Here's a fun one from Robin. Missy should be Lolly and Jace be Pops.
No, I like that.
Lolly and Pops.
kind of silly.
Well, then you're gonna love this one, Dad, from Jennifer. Fuzzy and Muzzy.
Hey, Fuzzy.
I do like. She did give an alternative, which is pretty good, Jace. You'll like this one. Duck and Birdie.
What about that?
Duck and
There
Birdie.
comes old Duck Jace.
That's pretty good.
Jace Wyam, Jace Duck.
A lot of them
Duck,
just said
man.
traditional mamaw papaw. A lot of them said that. This is a good one. Missy will like this one from Tammy. Missy should consider Honey because she's sweet. Jay should be called Bam Bam.
Bam Bam.
Bam Bam.
I like it.
All right, that's pretty good. Papa J, Grand Miss. Okay, Papa and Nanny. Most of these. Honey and the Rock. There's another Honey.
But look, I noticed Rock is
So
getting
why
some
is
traction.
it? While we're throwing around names, why is it? You can give the audience this. Why is it you call me Dad, and Jace calls me Phil?
Because they're weird. He and Willie both are strange people.
Because 2 of you call me dad, 2 of you call me
Right. By your first name.
Yeah,
We've talked about it before. We think it's because we used to run a business and they used to answer the phone.
No,
but I say it's just
think-
because they're strange.
I
people.
think when we were at that critical age of whatever 3 to 6, because that's where they say these psychologists, they say pretty much when you get 6, it's over. Well, you've figured out whatever you're going to do. Well, that was the most tumultuous time of your life.
up to
So-
6.
When I was 6 years old, you were, just acting like a crazed wild man. And so I think we just thought, you know what, that's not working. I really think that.
And Willie followed your lead.
He followed my lead. The dad and son.
That was he's old Phil.
It just was like, oh, Phil.
Maybe so. Let's take another break. So we've been talking about phones off camera. One of our sponsors is a company called Patriot Mobile, and they provide a cell phone coverage, and they're a little bit different from the major carriers in the sense that they're very pro-American, pro-family, pro-Christian value. And that's one of their calling cards because so many of the big names are obviously not when you see who they contribute to. So they give you an opportunity. If you don't want to send your money to those guys, you can go with these guys. It's a 100% U.S.-based customer service team. They have the highest rating among wireless carriers, which is important. And like I said, they share your values, the Constitution, sanctity of life, veterans, and first responders. So if you want to check these guys out, you're thinking about making the switch, go to patriotmobile.com/Phil, or you can call them 972-PATRIOT. You get free activation with the offer code Phil. They also have special discounts for veterans and first responders. So support a company that loves America, loves you, and shares your traditional family values. patriotmobile.com/Phil. That's patriotmobile.com/Phil, or call them at 972-PATRIOT. Well, it could have been.
I really think that.
It could have been, yeah, but then they always did. But then you're right. I don't understand. I always called you mom and dad. I never called you by your first name.
Well, when they said,
well,
because when somebody said when I was 6 years old and they said Dad's coming, I ran. So it wasn't a favorable view.
There was no chastisement associated with what I was called. That we just let it ride,
Yeah.
So
Well, y'all did.
If I'd have been like a kind of emotionally disturbed individual, I would have made a point out of that probably.
Yeah, you didn't. You
But
didn't
Phil
seem to mind.
Phil would do it. That's my name.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of people, they're like, "What's a respect?"
Well, they
thing?"
felt like
But-
they were disrespecting y'all
Yeah.
by calling you by your first name.
Yeah.
But that's just how we were raised. If you go up north, they think it's
But Jace
disrespectful
as
to
a
say
kid-
ma'am and sir and.
But
like
Jace
that.
or Willie as a kid, nor you, Al, none of y'all ever was what do you call it? Just you were never disruptive over
Yeah,
No.
belligerent.
Well, it's
belligerent.
people
None of
who
it.
make this
we
point.
were
though,
very respectful.
it's kind of like people who go to church and they argue about what the names of God or what you're going to call them, and then you go out there and live like the devil.
Yeah.
Well, you know what you're calling the guy. I don't mean the guy as in
Right.
disrespectful. I'm making my point here that if you're not respecting him in your life, because we never disrespected you
Not
in
once.
our life.
Not
So
once.
what we called you, I think we learned that. I mean, I actually
And that's a
think
good
that
po-
was true.
That's a good point because, like, we may have done things, especially me, that was disrespectful in our lifestyle towards who you were. It was not very honoring. But when you think about it, there are 2 different commandments, in the 10 Commandments, when God gave the law to the Jews, that dealt with how you respected Him
Sure did.
and your parents.
Sure
I mean,
did.
He said, "Don't misuse my name," and then He said, "Honor your father and mother." So, out of the top 10, 2 of them deal with this very subject, which means
I mean,
it's
I actually
important,
think because our childhood was traumatic, I think it was a contributing factor. We moved during that time, and you were, even when you came to the Lord, it was a little bumpy there. It was just because I look back, I was just scared to death of just like get out of this, go do your own thing, kind of.
And I was more, because I experienced more, I was more just happy and joyful that like.
But you were older,
right? That's what I'm saying. I was almost 11, but I was just like, he's back and we got a better life. Things are better, and I was more in tune with Mom than Jase was because he was younger. Like the hard parts for her. So that's why I think I was so overjoyed about it. So, I mean, I still remember, you talk about things you remember. I still remember clearly the day you pulled up in the apartment parking lot. I remember it clearly. So if you have a memory like that stands out, and I'm only, that was 45 years ago. Yep. I can remember the TV in the back, what it looked like.
That's why I brought up the age. They say that you're from when you're that age, like if you take a kid and put them in a real difficult situation from 3 to 6, you're going to have trouble. When all the brain is getting all lined out there. So
that's probably what Commandment 5 is all about.
That's right. That's exactly right.
I mean, that's what I've always thought, but I never kind of shared it because I thought, well, I may be wrong. But
so it's interesting now, and Phyllis, who we've now only known for a year and a half, last night she and Tony were at our house, and she got her first asked to come and share, her story. And so she's kind of working through it. But so she was asking me to give her some ideas about it. And, so we were kind of walking through her life. And it was really interesting because hearing her talk about it, even though we now met her for the first time when she was 44 years old, God's hand had been on her whole life, protecting her.
Yep.
Without really her being able, I mean, a lot of more bad things should have happened to Phyllis, and yet it didn't because of her setting, because she basically raised herself, Yep. And it was really interesting to hear her talk about it and sort of put that together where she can tell her life story. Obviously now it's, she's built more to the end, but I just thought, the hand of God being present, and when you can look back in your life and recognize it and notice, just like you, Dad. I mean, you had those 10 years. A lot of bad stuff could have happened to you. You could have been killed. You could have died in a fiery crash. A hunting accident. I mean, you were in a position where a lot of bad stuff could happen. But even though you weren't living for God, somehow still you survived it all. I
came close to death multiple times. And yet
here you are, still doing what you do, which I think is amazing. So I'll mention 2 more of these, Jace, and then we'll move on. Because this one I thought was pretty funny from Amy. Goob and Gigi. You would be Goob, I guess.
Yeah, I guess you thought that was.
I thought that was pretty funny.
So people are actually calling each other these names.
I guess so. There's some more.
Gigi was Missy's grandma. That's what they called her.
And so another one had Gigi and Paul, which I thought was pretty good. So,
but that's what the.
So take those to Missy.
I was trying
those to Missy and tell her that.
I was trying to be different. And I thought rock, there was a lot of meanings there.
I kind of like, the more, I was laughing about it when you said it, but the more I thought about it, I kind of like that.
You ought to ask Missy what she thinks. Oh, boy. She's like, because we were in 2 different vehicles, so we go home, I walk in, she's like, rock? Really?
And you didn't had 30 minutes to think about it when she left it.
I said, you're still thinking, but you don't ask the question if you don't want to hear the answer.
So how has it impacted your wife, which is Mama now, Ma?
She's loving it. She's excited, and there's because to me,
so when's the baby due?
Well, bad question, Phil, because I can't remember.
You got about a 9-month window. I mean, is it on the 6th month, the 3rd month?
Don't know exactly off the top of my head.
Well, it's 9 months
Most
from when she first found out.
Stay in the womb for 9 months. So,
how about this? The fall.
Oh,
somewhere in the fall.
Somewhere in the fall.
Which I noticed Bryden wasn't here. Was she working, or was she here? Did she come this weekend?
She didn't. Okay, but she was because she was working.
So she's beginning to waddle. The last time I say she get the waddling stage.
Yeah, get the waddle look.
Well, yeah. Yeah, she looks great, though.
Yeah, so I'm excited for them. They're going to do so well with it. But it really is. It's a life changer, Jace, because once you get into that, I mean, you're already kind of experiencing it. Of course, you still have a teenage daughter, but with my kids, like when they got married and started having kids, I realized that Dad is always like our overarching patriarch, but now I'm a patriarch.
Yep.
Like once I get a third generation, they're looking to me to be that sort of leader
yeah.
of this group.
That's why that chin of yours, it's whiter.
That's exactly right. Getting whiter every day.
Jason, you're following there. Yours is beginning to turn gray.
I knew you would point that out.
You know what I can't believe? I can't believe that all this has happened this quickly, Al. It seems fast now.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, because you are where you are. I mean, everything seems fast where you are. Because you look back, you have more memories. That's why I say Murray, who I meditate with a lot, I was like, the only thing he has left is history. Because he doesn't want to look ahead. He's like, boy, that's fast. Because he's looking where he's been.
Right.
It's like, well, that's all over.
By the way, we're the same age, Murray and I.
Yeah. So, that's why I was bringing it up.
Let's take another break. Yeah, I mean, it goes by fast. That's exactly the point of it. But you still remember those things. I mean, I'm just going back in my mind 45, 50 years ago. You were telling a story on one of the last couple of podcasts about remembering what a break looked like, a prairie, duck prairie.
Yep.
And that was over 50 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
But you still never forgot.
I was about 22.
Yeah. And yet, it does go by fast, which kind of makes you wonder and think about eternity with the idea of what will it be like without the passing of time.
Yeah.
Because we're so locked into it on Earth.
What a great thought, though.
It is. I mean,
but it is. That is the thought.
Right. Outside
talking about living in the present. If you don't have time, that's why Jesus said, I am.
Right.
You're like, what? But I want to figure out what that means.
That's exactly right. Which is important why we always live for that purpose.
Well, I love the story. I love the story where they tried to trap him. I think it's Matthew 20 off the top of my head. I'm not sure, but where they're like, well, now they took the Jewish law and they got a woman here, been married 7 times, because in their list of laws, which is frightening, if something happened to your husband, you had to marry the guy's brother, whether you like it or not.
Yep.
You're up. Next man up.
Yeah.
That's right. Exactly.
And
that was Jewish law.
We come up with these laws. So they're like trying to trap Jesus, like, not the resurrection. So they're like, we believe in the resurrection, but we believe more strongly, because based on what they said, in this Jewish law.
Right.
But whose wife? We're going to live forever, but whose wife is going to be? She's done this 7 times. But his answer, which he didn't really give them the answer they were looking for, but he did say, you're ignorant and you don't understand the power of God. And he quickly did that, which makes me think that it's going to be a lot easier, an easier adjustment than we think. He's like, the power of God will take care of that.
Well, that's always my point. Because people want us to talk about it more on the podcast. And somebody asked recently, why don't y'all ever talk about heaven more? And I was like, well, because the Bible doesn't deal a lot with it. I mean, we know it is an entity. It is something there, but it doesn't say a lot because we really can't comprehend it very well.
Because it's not about the place. It's not about the place.
Right.
Now people get, oh man, they hate it when I go down this road. But it's like, I've used this illustration thousands of times, but I got it from the Bible. If you're going on a trip, what is the most important thing?
Know where you're going?
No. But your first reaction is always that. Where are we going?
Where are we going?
It's actually not. It's who you're going with. Because that makes all the difference in the world. You could go to the greatest place on earth
with the
worst person. And guess what? By the time you get there,
it'd be terrible.
You don't care. This is not great. This is horrible.
Where's that Bible verse?
Well, Jase has a way of looking at stuff.
No. All right. The Bible verse is in John 14. So he says, just hang with me here for a second. He's like, one of the most famous quoted verses, especially at funerals, and they missed the entire point, and they continue today. I'm sure there's a funeral somewhere today where there's a guy quoting John 14. And
that happens a lot, the misusing the verses for sure.
Well, in a room full of Thomases, this is what happens. He says, don't let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God. Trust in me. I mean, that's where we should just stop, because that's my point. If you're with God and with Jesus, doesn't matter where you're going, But he opened it up saying, but in my Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, I would have told you, I'm going there to prepare a place for you. And so if people talk about this place, what it is and where they go to Revelation and
Is
say,
it a real house?
It's a floating square full of rooms that goes out through space. And I mean, don't grin, because people actually that I respect teach that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
going to drop down and pick you up. and
I've
you're
heard
gonna-
the big apartment complex.
Yeah.
So look, if I
It
go,
looked like a Borg cube landing on Earth.
After I heard it, Jace, I said, I'm not so sure heaven's such a great place.
so he's,
Streets of gold, like that's going to do you some good.
that's what I'm saying. It's just so
It's like New
ridiculous.
York City, just dressed up a little more.
Look,
man.
and they got Peter up there at the gate. I'm like, wait a minute. That gate was for the Spirit to fall. Does the door to the church? You can get in on that.
He's already opened the gate.
No, he's still up there. He's been waiting 2,000 years at the gate. His hair's getting longer, and we got a street to go. I mean, I'm making fun of it, but I just think if the point's best based on this. So he says, if I go and prepare a place for you, I'll come back and take you to be with me, that you also may be where I am. You know the way to the place where I'm going. Now, I'm just going to stop here, and because everybody talks about the place here, because they're like, well, that's what he was talking about. Just look in these 3 verses. How many times did he mention I or me or my? I mean, I'll let y'all
A
count.
lot.
Mm-hmm.
As in every other word.
Yep.
So Thomas said, just like we do when we hear the preacher, well Lord, well, you don't know where you're going. He all he got out of that was where.
Right.
So how can we know the way? We need to know where we're going and
Need a roadmap.
how. That's all. So Jesus answered, I think the most famous quote of all Jesus quotes, I am the way, the truth, the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. What happened to this place stuff? He wasn't talking about the place anymore. You're looking at him. So to me, that's the point, is you're going to go and be where I am. We're all going to be together. I mean, if you go to, look what he says in John 14 in verse 23. It's kind of the opposite. He said, Jesus replied, if anyone loves me, he'll obey my teaching. My Father will love him. We'll come to him and we'll make our home with him. Well, we'll just move the home. Now, what kind of home is that? What was he referring to, Jace? What exactly were the dimensions of the home?
What is the home?
Where is that going to take place? No, the home is where the entities are. Me, Jesus, the Holy Spirit, and God. That is the home. Now, you can call it heaven, earth, somewhere in between, somewhere beyond. So I think that was his point. It's who you're with.
Let's take our last break.
It's not describable.
I think it's who you're with and for how long.
But
So think, if you're with God forever, do you really need to know the details of the landscape?
on this side of it,
Peter gave us a little insight probably when he said, we're looking forward to new heavens and a new earth.
yeah.
And what does that mean?
Whatever.
Whatever.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
I don't know.
Well, Paul also said that
But it's better than the one you have now.
Paul also said in 1 Corinthians, I went to a place I'm not sure if I was in my mind, out of my mind. But I saw things too indescribable to talk to you about.
Well, y'all can rebut. Do you want to rebut you said, where's the verse?
I think that's, I have no rebuttal to that. I think you're exactly right. Because to your point, right before that, in John 13:36, Simon said, where are you going? To set that up.
We're not throwing those disciples under the bus because we do the same thing.
Sure.
Where and
the
what?
human mind cannot contemplate
No.
what's in store.
Which, to my point, that's why we don't talk a lot about it, because that's about all you can talk about.
That's right.
But Al, there are churches pontificating on this ad nauseum.
Yeah, and that's all.
And I mean, I've heard just this past Sunday, a guy it was not at church, but like we were together.
Yeah.
Then we go out to our place
Yeah.
because we had the thing.
Yeah, honor.
Yeah. And so, this guy gets up and starts pontificating on what heaven's going to be like. Well, the first problem that I had, because I'm trying to be open-minded, I'm trying to listen, but the first problem I had, he said, I want to quote to you from Revelations. And I thought, oh boy. Because when I hear
He added that S on
when
there.
I hear the plural version, this is one of my pet peeves in life. When I hear that plural version of Revelations, because I always go over there and check and see if it's changed in 50 years. Because I'm saying, no, there's no S. It's because he says this is the revelation of Jesus in the first 3 verses. It's his. It's not yours. It's not a revelation as part of the revelations that you're fixed to pontificate on what heaven is like, which is exactly what he did. And I thought, after this was over, after he finished, I thought, how would you ever prove that? I mean, it was stuff I had never heard before. What we're going to do, how long we're going to do it, who we're going to do it with, craziest stuff I've ever heard. And guess what? He may be right, but I don't think that's the point.
Right. And we started this talking about the idea of being a great-great-grandfather, having generations go out, which is why when you read the Old Testament, you don't read much about the resurrection, heaven, any of that stuff is in the Old. You don't even start reading about it until Jesus got here.
Yep.
Very little, prophetically about it. And the reason why is because in their minds, you lived through your progeny. The idea you had sons that then had other sons that then had other sons. So their whole system was built on that idea. And so that's how they imagine living on, which is why you read Abraham's story. It was so important to have an heir because he was like, God, you told me you had all these blessings, but I don't even have a son. How's this going to happen? He couldn't, he had a hard time reasoning to that. So that's the idea now, but you come along in the first century and you see the Sadducees and the Pharisees, but the 2 leading sects of leadership, only half of them believed in the resurrection at all. So it was a fairly new thing for them. So what was ironic was that here comes Jesus along. He's about to experience the resurrection for all eternity. So it's really interesting to me when you study that history of to see how easy it is to miss. But it's why you don't see much about heaven in the Old Testament.
And I'm for imagining. That verse says God can do all we ask or imagine. The fact that he's spirit-led to write that, it's okay to imagine. And I told you about that show I was watching. It's a worldly production. They're taking the most remote sites, wilderness, and the animals, and the name of the show is Eden. I think it's coming from England.
Yeah, right.
And I like watching that because I like seeing things without any human involvement or impairment whatsoever. It's interesting. And they're trying to show it friendly, but it's basically the food chain. Everything's chasing everything else. But they have a lot of interesting things. But so I, as a believer that this is the evidence that there's a God, you're looking at creation. They just found a place that we haven't done anything to. But I'm like, well, when I imagine where we're going to live or how long, if I see what he can do with just a ball in a galaxy, in a universe that's so big, we're just looking at one little ball that we're on with all this detail. So I let my mind imagine, we're going to have a lot of fun and enjoyment and wow. Because just that power of being able to create all these things is the most amazing thing that I can even imagine. And I'm seeing it. It's hard to wrap my head around. So I'm sure, what do you think?
It's a big universe out there.
You don't think that if he's bigger than the universe that we're not going to figure out a cool place to hang out?
Oh, what are you talking about?
And you're right. The wherever Jesus is where you find something good.
I just like that. Wherever Jesus is the point.
Yeah.
If you're there, you made it. You will be wild beyond your wildest dream.
And there's a certain amount of truth to I liked your analogy that when you go on a trip, who you go with does make the trip. It is better than the destination because
my wife cannot stand when I ask the question because she's like, I'm thinking about going overseas. And she's like, okay, Greece. What do you think? Well, what'd I say? I said, who's going? She said, me. Is that enough? I was like, I want to know who else, who is going, because I'm basing it on what I'm reading. I gave her the sermon. She's like, I'll get a list. I'm like, get the list. I want to know who's going.
It does matter.
Blame Jesus. That's the way I'm looking at things.
Hey,
So a couple of things I want to mention here we're almost out of time.
Are we almost out of time?
We are almost out of time. So Lisa and I are going to be in Ocean City, New Jersey on August 28, 29. That's a Saturday and a Sunday at the Ocean City Tabernacle. I've never spoken in a place that called themselves a tabernacle. I kind of like it. It's an old term from the Old Testament. Ocean City Tabernacle. We're doing a marriage thing on the 28th, and then I'm preaching on the 29th, so you can check out their website to get details. But if you're in that area, I know what's surprising to us, we're down here in West Monroe, Louisiana. You have to drive somewhere, like you think about going to Dallas or something. It's a long trip. But up in the Northeast, I mean, like we're flying into Philadelphia to get to New Jersey. In my mind, that because, we got to drive a while to get to another state down here. But they're just, an hour and a half, you're wherever. You're in 10 different states.
You need to give them the lesson we just gave. Because look, I looked up the definition of tabernacle, a fixed or movable habitation, typically of light construction.
Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's just
it's like a little house that people inhabit in.
Maybe it's
things.
Maybe it's a tent in Ocean City. I'm gonna find out.
So you need to go with the Hebrews 3:4. Every house is built by someone, because we're talking about where in a place, but God is the builder of everything. And then he said, but you are his house.
That's right.
Because Christ lives in us.
And we are a tent. We are a temporary. We're only here for a while, and then we've got eternity. Last thing I want to mention is don't forget, we haven't mentioned this in a while, your daily fill, which is Dad's devotion, 100 Days of Truth and Freedom to Heal America's Soul. You get the Walmart only. So if you hadn't gotten that yet, check it out at Walmart. Jason, anything you need to announce?
No, it's actually the innermost shrine. So make sure Jesus is at the center of your
Well, he will be at the center of my talk. I can guarantee you that.
I've got to take a couple weeks off and rest up. So see where I'm at.
We're trying to let you guys know when our appearances are. So anyway.
I don't know is the answer.
And thanks, by the way, all of you that send in the names. You made my day. I laughed so hard, so I can't wait to hear what Missy thinks about it.
I will say this. I will be somewhere probably near you in the coming weeks. I just have no idea when that will be or where. So look, check your local stuff.
So helpful.
Thanks for listening to the Unashamed podcast. Help us out by rating us on iTunes. And don't miss an episode by subscribing on YouTube, and be sure to click that little bell to get notified about new episodes. And for even more content that you won't get anywhere else, subscribe to Blaze TV at blazetv.com/unashamed.